Hello everybody, Keith here again. I've got a number of repots to do, but I've decided I'm going to do them on separate videos. They're not particularly allied, so they might as well be separate. I also wanted to just have a quick look at some of the plants that I think might be of interest, that are showing some signs. Let's start with this one. This is, let's get it back a little, there we are. This is Brassia Chieftain. It was bought as a no ID from a garden centre in bloom, and it stopped me in my tracks, literally. That was one of those things where, must have. And I brought it home. It's not very vigorous. It doesn't do an awful lot, but when it flowers, it's great. All I would say about it, Roger talks an awful lot about reading your plants, not the books. And this one really is an example of getting to know your plant. Not just plants in general, but plants individually. When it put this new growth out last year, it went on and on and on and didn't put any new roots down. And I got quite worried because it just didn't seem to be doing an awful lot. It wasn't sort of dehydrating or anything silly, but it wasn't very happy, as I thought. And then all of a sudden, the roots appeared. Now, if you look at a lot of orchids, they will root more or less as soon as that new growth gets going. And some of its closely related plants do. My Zygopetalum does. Almost as soon as that new growth starts to move, gets to only a short size, you get a lot of roots coming out. My Zygopetalum is another case in point. I mean, I know they're not that close related, but that chucks roots out like there's no tomorrow. This one doesn't. So last year, I was really wondering whether it had got some sort of disease or what, it suddenly put these roots out at the last minute. And I don't know how well you can see this, but before it's put roots out, it's actually started to develop the pseudobulb. And it's the only orchid I've got that does that late. So really, this is just an example of get to know your plants individually. Don't, get too worried or what have you that one doesn't do something exactly the same as the others, even if they are fairly closely related. Another one that's a bit different, obviously a much smaller orchid, this one, and you're probably thinking, oh, that's a Phalaenopsis. Well, it's not actually. It's a hybrid between Rhinanthera bella and Doretianopsis. So in other words, that is a cross between a Phalaenopsis and a Doretis somewhere, and this one is called Purple Gem. And as you can see, that looks nothing like a Rhinanthera. Rhinantheras look like small Vandas, and this looks like a small Phal. It does have some Vanda characteristics though. It puts new root tips up. This is a plant that hasn't done an awful lot over the winter. It sat on the windowsill, it hasn't grown, it hasn't died back, which is perhaps the more important, but it hasn't done anything. And all of a sudden it's put out two root tips from there and pushed those on. There's a root tip here, and there's a root tip all the way down there. And of course we've got a nice new leaf coming. Now, not only does it look like a Phalaenopsis, the flowers don't look remotely like a Rhinanthera flower either. But it is quite a pretty little thing. Very, very small Phalaenopsis-like flowers. Really quite pretty. One I bought almost on an impulse. It was in flower when I got it. But it was just somebody suggested, oh, try Rhinanthera. They're fairly easy going, and it was the first one I came across that had Rhinanthera in it, and I didn't really know what I was doing. But that's doing all right. So again, this has got sort of, it is a hybrid. It looks a lot like a phal, behaves a lot like a phal. Still got some Vanda in it from the Rhinanthera side. This one is sort of a, not quite a brag or a pat on the back for me or anything like that. But this I'm really pleased with. This is a seedling of Dendrobium Hilda, which is a cross between Dendrobium speciosum and Dendrobium tetragonum. Which tetragonum I don't know, whether it's the basic one or not. And as you'll be able to see quite well, I think, you've got a lot of small leaves where I got it out of the flask. I bought a flask of these from a speaker at one of our East Midlands Orchid Society meetings, somebody that's very well known for growing seedlings, and it was I was shying away from doing it. He said, no, give it a whirl, and it wasn't that expensive. And I've got 3 pots of these things, and they're all growing. I lost a few, but you will, I think, with seedlings. But I probably did it at the wrong time of year, because I deflasked them in January 2019, shortly after I bought them. And I suspect that was probably a mistake. It probably wasn't warm enough. So I've got a feeling that this might have grown faster, or they might have established better had I waited a little bit longer. But it's grown, it sort of gradually got bigger and bigger leaves. We've actually got a pseudobulb here which shows what it should, the square pseudobulb, the cane, from the tetragonum. But this one, as you can see, is growing straight up, and it's got a nice strong leaf on it. So I'm really hoping that that is going to turn into the first adult style cane. And last of this group, the last 2 of this group I should say, are my zygote types. This one is Zygonosia Rhine Blue Angel. It's been on a windowsill, a northeast facing windowsill over the winter, and it's been taken off the windowsill every night and put on a table in the living room and then moved back every morning, because the way the curtains are in there, it'll get knocked about too much otherwise. It's done fine. It flowered for me once. I've got some new growths which haven't flowered, and this is a typical zygote. It tends to flower on new growths, so if it doesn't flower early, it's not likely to. But I brought it into the conservatory and wondered whether it might do well in here, whether it might be too bright for it or whatever. And it's sitting on this table, so it's behind the rack. It's getting good light, but no direct light at all. And this new growth here has moved on quite rapidly, so that's pleasing to see. And finally, this is my Zygopetalum Rhine Clown. It's supposed to be Sensation, which is what I bought it as, but it isn't. And it's just a follow-up. I repotted this not long ago. You'll find the video in my elsewhere on my YouTube videos. I don't know how well you're going to see this, but the roots, if you go and have a look at that video, the roots from this new growth were not going down into the medium. They were clustering all around the base of the growth, and they weren't really taking any moisture up. Well, now those same roots are thicker and they are bright green, so they're obviously pulling a lot of moisture up. And these other two new growths over here do appear to be doing a little bit. Whether they'll both mature, I don't know. But that's those. And now I'm going to just show you this, and then I'm going to put everything away, and then we'll come back and we'll get on with the repotting. This is my White Twinkle, and it's almost ridiculously vigorous. I think I bought it last year, 2019, in the March at the East Midlands Orchid Society show from Lawrence Hobbs, and they were out of flower, and this one was in quite a state. The pseudo bulbs were completely flat. I mean, they were all so flat that I really thought that this was how this thing grew, and I was amazed when they started to plump up again. But it put up quite a few new growths last year, and this year I've counted a lot again. If we start from here and go around, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, coming round again, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So we've got 12 new growths coming on this, and it's already jamming in the pot, and some of these new growths are coming up with pleated leaves. So I need to get it into a better pot, and hopefully get it into a clear pot so I can see what it's doing. But I am going to probably put some holes in the pot. I don't know yet. I'll see what it's like inside, see how it's doing, see how the roots are doing. This was repotted not that long after I got it, and it's done very well. Now, I bought this one, which is a red twinkle, at the same time, and this is nothing like as vigorous. This put up 3 new growths last year, which flowered, and it's putting up 3 again this year. So we've got 2 plants which are nominally the same clone, apart from the colour, but they are very different. So anyway, that's a quick intro done. I'll get everything cleaned up, and then we'll get stuck into this repot. Okay, let's have a look now at this White Twinkle. It was watered on Monday. It is now Wednesday, so I'm not going to be surprised if it's still quite wet, but these things are drinkers, as they say, so it's not necessarily a problem. But we got the usual problem with the Westland mix, that we've got roots in the top half, and to be fair, just tugging at them, most of the roots seem pretty good, but you've got a lot of stuff down in the base of that pot that isn't doing anything whatever, and it's just staying wet. And I've had that so much now, I am definitely going off using Westland on its own. I think if I was going to keep using it on its own, I would need to put a lot more holes in the pot to try and get it to dry out. Now, I don't think that these things are very deep rooted anyway, but I'm going to put it in this because if it's going to keep putting, you know, 6, 8, 10 new growths out every year, it'll be through that pot in no time at all. I can have the plant so just below the level of the pot, which is how I like them, and if I put a lot of ordinary bark in the bottom of there, I think it will be fine, because since these do like to be wet, and as I say, if I'm just stroking it, there are some dead roots, which is no surprise to anybody, I'm guessing, but it's just not drying out. Anyway, I'm going to go and wash this under the tap and have a play with this sort of matted area in the middle, and see if I can clean that up, and then we'll come back and actually do the potting up and see where we finish. Okay then, I've given it a rinse and cleaned the bottom of it up as best I can. It's a real mat of roots. It's going to be very hard to actually get medium underneath it, but it's shallow rooted, and when I did the other twinkle a little while ago, that's shallow rooted, and I think that's another case of excuse me another case of reading your plants, because you might want a water retentive medium around the roots, and given the fact that this Westland stuff stays moist, and we haven't really got a lot of problems with this, I think that what we need is Westland around the roots, so it sits in that. But what you don't want is anything that's going to be water retentive underneath, so that if it does outgrow the Westland stuff, the roots will go down and start chasing moisture. So I'm going to do again what I've done in some recent repots, and I'm going to put a good couple of handfuls of this medium bark from Burnham's in the bottom of the pot, so as it sits like that, or more or less like that. And I want to use the Westland for the rest of it. As I say, there are some dead roots in there, but really, in all honesty, I don't know how I'm going to get the I don't know, forgot what I was going to say now. I don't know how I'm going to get stuff underneath the plant. It's so it's such a mat of root. I've not seen anything like this before, possibly because it's formed a clump, and we've got a lot of roots coming from all over. I mean, you've got new growths coming from the middle of the plant, the outside of the plant, absolutely all over everywhere. And as I went around cleaning it up, I actually found some more, because some of these old pseudobulbs are forming 2 new growths per bulb. So yeah, you clean away a little piece of not very clever sort of old sheath and that sort of thing, and lo and behold, you've suddenly got a little piece of green looking at you. So I hope you can see what I'm doing and what I'm trying to do. I don't want vast amounts of medium higher up than the base of the pseudobulbs. I'm finding with some other plants in the Oncidium alliance that even if they like to be moist, they don't like the bottom of the pseudobulbs to be wet. So if you keep it down, give the plant the opportunity to grow, draw moisture from below, but not like that. So that to me will do very nicely. It's still not over potted, I don't think, but I think you can see now that we've got the coarser stuff at the bottom, we've got the finer stuff higher up, and I hope that that means that this will drain, stay airy, and this might stay moist, but it will dry off. If it doesn't, at least now that I've got it in a clear pot, I can bang some holes in it and get it so that it's drying out at a sensible kind of a pace. So that's the first of my videos for the time being. Like I say, I've got several more repots to do, but I've got different ones for different things, and they're not really related, so I don't think they want to go into a single video. The other thing I've got is a couple of unboxing videos that'll have to come soon. I've ordered some orchids from Burnham's, and also from somebody that I'm a Twitter friend with, a guy called Kev's Orchids, who also sells through eBay, and I've picked up from him something that I've wanted for a little while now, and that's the Morliana variant of Miltonia spectabilis, and that has a completely purple flower and it looks gorgeous from the photos, so I'm really looking forward to that. So as far as this video goes, thanks for watching, and I'll see you fairly soon. Bye.